Hello, everyone. Welcome to the sixth webinar. This is the, as in this webinar, we are going to introduce the team behind Nurture. Before we start, I'll introduce Sanjeet. Sanjeet is going to handle the webinar and take you through the program Nurture program and introduce you to the panelists. So he's from the 2017-19 education batch and he joined APU after 23 years in the tech world. He currently manages Sandeepan School, which is a rural school with a philanthropic mission. This is based out of Udupi. And he also manages a travel startup called O2U2.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you very much for the introduction and managing to host this webinar. I'm delighted to be the host for this webinar. So let me get started by trying to bring in some context of what we are trying to do. As you all know, these are trying times. Everything is kind of turned upside down. The way we used to do things is no longer the way we do things. And we have started to reimagine almost every second aspect of our life. Having said that, through our life in our campus as well as beyond, we always tend to think about solving problems. And I think the 2 years or more at APU that we have spent in our UG and PG programs kind of tunes us better to start thinking about how to solve some of these problems. But at the same time, when we know and when we have an idea, it is very unlikely that we know where to start from. Of course, we can read a lot of material on the internet and so on, but nothing like getting mentorship, getting views from people who have done something in the same space, learning about their journeys to go ahead. And that's the whole idea that we wanted to bring to you through this webinar. And let me begin by setting the context with introducing the Nurture platform. And rather than me giving a monologue about what it is, I would like to pose some questions to the team that has formed, a couple of members of the team that is the core of the Nurture platform. It is Rajesh Joseph, who's from our School of Development, as well as Anil Miskat, who's from the School of Development. Rajesh is faculty. Many of you may be knowing him. And Anil is from the 2017-19 batch. So let me get started and ask this question to Rajesh. Rajesh, why this platform?
Good evening, all. So let me start by why this platform. And I think this should have been done long time back, I feel. But nevertheless, here we are. Why this platform is many of our students, especially when the COVID hit, started asking us, especially me and Nasrul, about what else now, because sometimes people lost their job and we wanted to start something new. They started asking a lot of questions about how to go about it. So what we thought was whether we can create a platform for our students who are passed out, where we can nurture their ideas, right? Any idea which is there, so that it can be kind of a sounding board in terms of taking the idea across. Okay, so we had quickly realized, and we brought in a team which mostly consists of alumni first and faculty all together, including UG, PG, everybody together. So that is one way of one of the main objective of Nurture. The other objective is also a very personal objective, is being there in the university, everyone. You know that we do have a idea of development that we all nurture to start. One of the things in this COVID times, what you all could have seen is how nature is coming back and taking over, and this is a new world and everything. And I know that this is not something new for us. This is what we dreamt in our university, to create a new world. But slowly, post the lockdown, what we see is people are getting back to the same old world. What is there? And what I thought is, what's the best way for our students who nurture or have an idea of development to start something new and imagine something new after this whole COVID thing? Because it looks like everybody did talk about in the lockdown period what kind of world we want, but it looks like everybody's forgotten. And I felt it is best for our students who have been there in the university, who have known what is this, and from a different field, from education to environment to labor to livelihoods, health, who can reimagine. And I think this is the best way for our students to come forward with that idea rather than getting lost. And I hope this platform, Nurture, can be that platform to start and to start your new ideas. Sanjay?
Thank you so much, Rajesh. So we got a brief of why this platform. So Anil, can you help us understand what is this platform all about?
Yes, Sanjit. I want to build on a couple of points that both you and Rajesh mentioned about Reimagine, right? What really is Reimagine? Before I get into what is the platform, right? What really is Reimagine? So think about COVID, and we've got different situations, whether it is an NGO, whether it's a restaurant. This afternoon, I was talking to one of our classmates, Netra, and pre-COVID, she was busy getting prepared to set up a yoga studio, right? And she sent us all the pictures. And then COVID struck, so there was no way for people to come there to practice yoga. So this is an opportunity to reimagine. Now, what she's done is she set up an online platform where yoga is taught by her, and students from different parts of Tamil Nadu are attending the yoga classes. Right. So now she's addressing more number of people. There are students from US also attending her classes. So she's running 3 batches now. Not just that, she's also customizing it for a particular, let's say, hormonal problems. So a session focused on that, right? So this is one example of how people are reimagining things. Another example, we've all seen the struggle the migrant laborers are going through, right? Some of us may be familiar with Hak Darshak. I think they have a fantastic model where they are helping the migrant laborers understand their entitlements. And there's a small cost associated to it, but they're getting them to know different entitlements, right? So every entity is reimagining the way they were doing things, right? And this is an opportunity for our students to reimagine things also. So that's the reimagine part. Now, what exactly is this platform? Let me take a minute to give you a slightly different analogy, right? I kind of position this as a virtual incubator. And talking about incubators, they are entities which help startups in their journey. Right? Now, there are about 200 plus incubators across India, but all addressing social enterprise, for-profits, etc. And there are very few which actually address look at it from a non-profit standpoint. The only exceptions probably are the likes of Nudge or NSR Cell, who have started this off late, right? Now, we as the faculty, the staff, and some of our alumni, we've got together to say, is there something that we can do to help many of our alumni in their course of the journey, right? So about the platform, let me just share a little bit, because we had one interesting question saying, tell me more about the journey of this, right? So I'll share my screen to give you folks a picture about what are the different stages and what kind of support is required, right? Is my screen visible for you folks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just based on the question, I said it's important that we let people know what exactly is it. So if you look at any product, program, etc., or a founder, and we have 4 different founders on this, there is a trigger for them to start a new venture. There's a trigger for them to start a new enterprise, right? Couple of people get ideas and they start it. Now, however, there's a journey associated to it, right? From starting to scale, and there are a number of stages around it, right? You need to know your community, you need to know your customer, and need analysis is critical, right? I won't get into details at this stage. Secondly, you have to also kind of prepare a blueprint which has things like what should the entity look like, what kind of resources I require, is there evidence of a solution for this particular problem, right? So those are few things that founding team puts together on the blueprint, right? And then you get into validating that your particular concept, you validate it, you test it out with a proof of concept, and then you've got to fine tune it, right? And sorry, this is the box below. You've got to fine tune it and test it. As you fine tune it, you realize that some of your assumptions may not hold good. You need to tweak them, right? And that's where you tweak your solution a bit, whether it's a program or a product. You not just tweak it, you also start thinking about what kind of resources I need to scale, right? Talking about scale, there's a lot of debate about what kind of scale. And again, it's based on you as an individual. You can scale out, which is multiple blocks, multiple districts, multiple states and the country. Or you can just scale in and say, I'll look at it from all angles. I'll look at it from healthcare. I'll look at it from education. I'll look at it from sustainability angle. All these angles together is what I look at it, right? So that's the life cycle of a founder or a journey of a product, etc. What we as a team behind the platform intend to do is help handhold the folks who are interested in this at each stage, right? That's what we intend to do. Whether it is helping validate your analysis or helping decide, am I better off doing a Section 8 company or a society or maybe a private limited company, right? So those debates go through people's minds. And then as I do this, where do I get my funding from? This team will help you, guide you, etc. That's a little about what we'll do. Let me pause now and hand it over back to Sanjit and Rajesh, if you would like to add.
No, Sanjit, Anil, let's go.
Yeah, so Anil and Rajesh, I'll leave the next question. I think most of us will, gives a good perspective, Anil, that this is more like a, an incubator, as you mentioned, and people in the tech world and all will be very familiar with the incubator concept. And I'm sure, like you mentioned, the number of incubators for social NGO or non-profit is very less, though there is a huge need for investment and channelizing the money that corporates have, at least as CSR funds or other kind of things, into very structured way of solving real life problems on the ground and reaching out to the masses, right? So the next thing we would like to know is, how will it help? How will it help? And also maybe you could let us know more about, you said nurture team. So maybe take a minute or two and tell us who's behind nurture team. You mentioned alumni and faculty. I think it will be good to put a more detailed name to the team.
Okay. So in terms of how will it help, right? Now, if you look at the typical incubators, they understand a business language. Not many understand the social language. Now, we as APU faculty, staff, alumni, when some alumni says gender, inclusion, sustainability, or caste, we don't need to get to next level details, right? At a high level, we resonate with what they're talking about, right? So from how will it help? That's the first barrier that we'll definitely cross in terms of handholding them. And then post that, through the journey, we intend to support them at each stage. We'll talk about the process a bit later, but we'll support them at each stage. Again, may not be able to support all the applicants, but at least we'll do stage by stage and see how this progresses. I'll let Rajesh add some more thoughts. And we also have folks like Annapurna, Padma, etc., who can also add. I'll share the team names in a bit. Yeah.
So one of the other things I want to add a bit is we can surely make this a platform which has been run by alumni and faculty, and everybody is. This is not a hard and fast rule that this is the team. We'll also increase the team as we go. But so this is a series that we are calling people who did from APU alumni their own ventures. But I also want to say that when we are asking hand holding, we'll also might able to identify proper people for whom you can go and talk. We can also might be have quite a few webinars of how to handle finance, how to handle how to do a kind of a financial spreadsheet and all that. So that we could have a series of workshop people who are really interested, and we can also pinpoint what kind of workshop and whom to we can address. So it will be a kind of a very personalized kind of an hand holding, and I hope this will take off in that direction.
Thank you, Rajesh and Anil. So Anil, maybe you can let us know who's in the team.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm really happy to present the team that's there, and it really built over a span of last few months. So we have good representation from the alumni side and from the staff side also. Each person comes with a unique background. There are people who come from investment banking. There are people who have started their own ventures. There are people who are running schools. There are people who are member of boards. So we really have a good mix of the founding team, if you will, for the Nurture platform. And I'm sure as we progress, we'll really add more and more value to the alumni. One more thing I would like to add is in terms of how do we help. I think this team between us has maybe more than 200 plus years of experience, or 200 or more. And one is years of experience and the power of the network. I always say don't underestimate the power of the network. Each of us has a relatively good network, and putting all that together, I'm sure we can help new ideas, people who want to reimagine the future, to come back with some really interesting, innovative approaches to solve some of our societal issues. The other one, before we forget, is as we were talking, there were questions on, is this only social sector, or is it, right? So we are open to ideas. It could be small businesses, small enterprises, for-profits, non-profits, as long as it helps people from an employability standpoint, from solving some of the current challenges and the future challenges.
Thank you so much, Anil. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good lens to see that if you're giving employability to a large number of people, that itself becomes a fairly good cause. Having said that, just that, I wrote an article yesterday on LinkedIn about the transformation of my school in these challenging times. And yesterday morning, I got an SMS from a guy in the US asking me that his friend wants to start something. He has a NGO in the vocational space, and how can I get to transfer money from the US to India? And for some of us who know how FCRA works and things like that, there's a fair amount of work. It's not as simple as just opening a bank account, right? And these are the kind of nuances. You don't find a lot of information out there, or at least find people who can guide you through some of these, and what are the challenges and what are the milestones for these things. At this point, I think we can go to the next section of our webinar today. I'm delighted and very glad to introduce the panelists. We have a very good mix of experienced panelists who are there with us today, all alumni of Azim Premji University. Let me introduce them one by one. Nagaharita did her MA development in the first batch 2011 to 13. She's the founder of Meme Craft Store. She's a development professional and a thriving entrepreneur, passionate about the rich artisanal cultures of India. Welcome, Nagaharita. Then we have one of the things we said in our initial announcement of the platform was that it will be good to have maybe APU students, alumni partner together. And one of our best partnerships of alumni starting a venture is between Ram Prakash Krishnan and Regila Marinas, who are from the MA Education 2015-2017. Both are co-founders and director of Vidya Viday Seed for Education. They work in the space of transforming education by empowering educational leaders right now in Tamil Nadu, and have impacted more than 10,000 students. Welcome, guys, to this webinar. And finally, we have somebody from our UG campus, Sai Harish Perka, who's done his BSc in biology in the 2016-19 batch, and he's the founder and president of NEED, which is Necessity of Education, Equality and Dignity. Harish, as he's popularly known as, is a passionate social worker, professional, social welfare professional, working to improve the status of the vulnerable communities. So the way we'll go is, I will ask a set of questions to you guys, and then you can share your experiences and your journeys. So let me go with Haritha first. Haritha, can you share with us what was the trigger point? What got the spark in you to say, yes, I should do something?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think this is almost the first time I'm actually talking in front of so many people. It always happens between very really small groups, very informal groups. So, and I'm very glad I'm able to speak to the alumni and the Azim Premji University. It always holds a very special place in our hearts. I mean, all our first batch students, we do get very nostalgic when we say APU. So thank you so much for the team nurture and Azim Premji University. So the intention to start something, the trigger, I don't know if there is exactly a trigger point as such. I've always wanted to do something on my own. I think with very specific to handicrafts, I think something popped up in my head when I was working with tribal communities in the Telangana district and the Andhra region. So I used to work as a facilitator in a tribal school facility. I used to live there. So it gave me the opportunity to extensively travel across various tribal areas. So that's when I got in touch with these communities which were into making these beautiful things. So it was a very vague thing initially, but then once I started understanding the nitty-gritties of the crafting processes and what happens once the product is ready and once it goes into the market, the kind of things that, the whole supply chain bit, when I went through the whole thing, I realized that there are issues with the market linkages, and that's when I wanted to do something there. The issue of market linkages was pretty evident when I started working with them, because it's a very fragmented sector. At least, I mean, handlooms and handicrafts, generally it goes hand in hand. The word, you use it together, but then it's very different. Handicrafts and handlooms are two different sectors. Handlooms, in some way or the other, you at least have some kind of vague organizations. You have cooperatives in place. You have, certain clusters coming into one place, but it doesn't often happen with handicrafts. They're very fragmented, but then the production is very huge. It's huge produce that happens in every village in the country. So market linkages, the problem of market linkages became very evident. So that's when e-commerce website was there in my head back then in 2011, but then it was very early on. Amazon was the only popular one. It wasn't still operational in India. It was selling books. We used to order from the US or some other place. So, but then there was this huge thing that the e-commerce is going to be the next big thing. And then, subsequently I joined the university in mid 2013. One thing led to another. It happened in a very organic manner. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Haritha. Very interesting journey that is, and of course, e-commerce is now, I think, without e-commerce, I don't know how we would have kind of survived in this COVID times. It's probably come as a big rescue for helping us to not move around. So Ram and Regila, what about you guys? When was it that you got this, the spark? When is it that you decided that you should be getting into this space?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Sanjit and team. It was dream come true. I still remember we were even with my senior batch students, we were discussing about starting an incubation in the university. I'm visualizing what I had conversed about with the professors like Nazrul, Vikas, and so many people. For us, we both were sitting in Sujata ma'am's class, Sujata Rao. It was about school improvement school improvement class. We both didn't talk after the class because we were only thinking about school improvement, and we both sat together and we scribbled our entire ideas on the paper, and we wanted to work in the space of school improvement. That's how the idea of Vidya Viday started. I still remember that day. It's all started in her class, actually, the idea of Vidya Viday. But we both wanted to start an social enterprise. Uh, that was the idea, but we didn't have any concept to start the new startup. Yeah, but entire idea of Vidya Viday started in her class.
Just to add on to Ram, I think the session was so intense on how does school have these gaps which doesn't enable it to deliver quality education, and it was just that whole as if we solved a puzzle, and it was like, why don't we take this puzzle and show it to our school leaders at how we could do it, and why don't we facilitate this whole journey of realizing them that this is how you could provide quality education. So I think that moment was something that triggered us to start this whole initiative. Ram was someone who always wanted to have his or own enterprise. He was working from his engineering days for it, but for me it was like it was too soon. But then the confidence of actually on the solution, as well as the work we were planning to do, the ideation over a coffee in the canteen, was something that started our whole journey. I think we always talk about that day and that moment that sparked this whole thing.
Thank you, Ajila. Wonderful to know that you guys got this idea in actually an SOLM, specialization class. Great to know that. So Harish, what about you? What was the trigger? What got you thinking and start up your social enterprise?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, yeah, thanks for this opportunity. Yeah, so I can't decide it as a one triggering point that led me to start this organization Lead, but there are a couple of instances and couple of situations what I've seen in my life. Those were actually the motivation behind starting this organization. So let me tell you a little story about mine. So I was from a rural place of Telangana, and I studied in social welfare residential schools. And all my education was free from first class to 12th class. I studied in residential government schools and I finished up. After that, I picked up the Azim Premji. But the journey I had before reaching to Azim Premji was very difficult and critical journey I had. So because I know how it feels without having a father in right stage, and I know how it feels when you're born in a low caste family and where you don't have economical support from parents, and you see the sort of inferiority complex from other people around. So there are a lot of instances which actually rooted in me. This is not I never dreamed to start an organization. I never wanted to start an organization, and I actually never interested to do this sort. That is why I picked the biology group. But the situations I have, and inferiority I faced, and the conditions I faced throughout my journey, those are the reasons what made me to start. And not just these situations, but there is a one man behind starting this organization and making this a larger scale. That guy name is Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar IPS, who is recently promoted as the additional DGP of Telangana. So when I was studying in social welfare residential schools, that person took in charge as a secretary of those residential schools. So that guy brought up a revolutionary change in the education system, curriculum, pedagogy, and maintenance of schools. But he introduced a lot of 10 commandments, and also he always used to say one thing, that we should pay back to the society where we came from. So that was that the ideology of that guy, and the thought, the way of changing he has started in the institutions where I studied. That was actually given me so much of power and strength to start his organization. Then after my graduation, I got placed in some other program in Chennai. Then I lot of, actually I could say it's not based on interest, but this organization started based on the need of the community, and need that I strived for, need that I looked for when I was during my journey. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Harish. Very touching to know, and very I'm delighted to know that you've taken up your experiences and hardships that you had come through and gone to the ground level to really now help more people. So let's move ahead. Harita, how did you go about implementing, now that you knew that you had to do something, how did you go about implementing and your idea about taking the craft, giving a marketing and sales arm to the craft world, handicraft world?
Yeah. So initially, I wasn't really sure that it's going to be an e-commerce website. All I knew was there is a problem of supply, and somebody needs to pitch in there, because with whatever exposure I had and with whatever reading I could do at that point, that's what I understood. So after I graduated from the university, I worked with a couple of organizations in Hyderabad, and then I started traveling, which was a very crucial phase, because we were trying to understand the products, because like it is the case with any other product in India, there are a lot of Chinese handicrafts that are flooded in the market. Many people might not be aware of it, but then often the things that we buy on the websites also, and in stalls and exhibitions, and the so-called handicrafts melas that are held by the government, most of the products are. When I actually started researching, I ended up getting to these sources which would guide me to the Chinese sources, because you get them at cheaper prices and you could sell them at higher rates. So, and I had nobody to guide me back then, because I was on my own, and I had my sister along with me. We worked together. So there was very little exposure or information. And I come from a very serious family of academicians, and also I think I have that bent of mind to go deep into something, to analyze, to assess, and all of that. I didn't have that business bent of mind as well. So we have spent quite an amount of time trying to get to the right sources, because that's the crux of the story. You need to get to the right source. So we traveled extensively. We visited NGOs and fair trade organizations which would actually work with artisans. I mean, if I buy a product from them, and if I'm going to sell it somewhere, I should make sure the money goes to the artisan and not to, some middleman. So yeah, and then once we started curating products, once we had the curation in place, it was a bootstrap budget startup. Like, we managed to pull in some money from my cousins who lived abroad. That's how we pulled in money, and we started off. We started off with a small store in Vizag. It's a small city, a coastal city in Andhra Pradesh called Vizag. We started off because just to get a hang of the response of people, because we don't know how people would react. We weren't selling handlooms and saris. We were selling handicrafts, which are very new. So, and the response was very good, actually. To our surprise, we were very shocked. People actually started walking in, people started buying things. We were with very little marketing. There's no marketing as such. We were very surprised. And then we thought we should go to the customers, because we didn't have enough budget in place to market and take the product to the customers. So then we started doing stalls. I think it's by doing stalls, we learned a lot. That is where major learning happened. We could understand the customer behavior. Every time we bought something from the artisan, we went and we sold it to the customer. And again, when we got back to the artisan, that's an entire cycle. We learned and we realized a lot of things. With the whole development background I had till then, the artisan is somebody who doesn't know much, and we have to go out there and educate him. It is true to a certain extent that definitely he needs help, he or she, and there has to be tools in place to empower them. But an artisan is somebody who's not just an artist, he's also a businessman. He knows what goes into selling his product. It's not like he's sitting there with no information, because when we started visiting them and talking to them, they would often show me mobile and tell me that, look, we produce something at 10 rupees, and this particular website or this person is selling it at 100 rupees. We know what goes into this. But the problem is, I don't want to move out of my comfort zone, travel all the way to the city and deal with the whole headache of projecting myself as a modern person. I don't want to go through all of that. If someone is going to do all of that for me and pay me a certain price, I'm okay with that, as long as they don't exploit me. Now there are no benchmarks, there is no standardization of prices since it's an unorganized sector. It's
Right.
a certain market level that you need to follow. So that's when actually I learned a lot. Till then, I had this huge amount of sympathy which comes from my development background that, oh, ayyo, these are very disempowered people and I'm here to help them out. That thing, like, it blew my mind. I had learned a lot from them. In fact, I learned a lot. They taught me a lot in the entire process. So, yeah, then we did a lot of stalls, and also in terms of customer behavior, because I had this. We started off with this notion that we always have this quote by Octavia Paz, a Nobel, a Mexican poet, who says that handicrafts belong to an era wherein the products were, it was products were things we use were not separated from, beauty and utility were not two different things. Anything that is beautiful can be used. It's not like beauty is meant to be somewhere up there and it's a matter of aesthetic taste as such. It's a matter of taste. But I realized that when we were doing stalls, because often we had these preconceived notions in our mind that when someone is approaching us, a female or a male, then we would think, oh, this person is not going to buy. He will not understand what handicrafts are. Handicrafts are very, the matter of taste. To us, a shock, those whom we thought will never pick the item would come down and pick the most beautiful product. And we were just like, that's all. We had to take it. So those were very good learnings. And I think that's where we thought, okay, this is not just a quote from another book. This is a reality. This is actually true. That's where we derived our strength from. And with the growing demand for the products, we finally ventured into the e-commerce domain. Yeah.
Anil, thanks for showing the e-commerce website of Neem Craft Store. Thank you so much. Regila, Ram, what about you guys? What was your journey like?
Yes. So like we said, I think we had everything on our pen and paper, designing what our program would look like and what we wanted to do in our schools. And I think that was a phase where we were actually in our second year, the program getting over, and the job opportunity starting at that point. And one thing that we realized, we just randomly went for a first orientation from a company called Mantra, and Mantra Social Services, which is in Bangalore. Somewhat the idea, the concept that they were talking aligned to what we were actually discussing. So we didn't know that they are going to be our mentor, but we just randomly entered to, validate our idea that, okay, what we are thinking, does that, works in the field, or how different is Mantra doing from us. So we just went for the orientation. And during their orientation, we realized that what we have written in paper, they're actually implementing on field. And, everything is happening already. It's been 2 years journey for Mantra, and we could learn a lot from what they are doing. So what I think for us, it was just like, we met the right people at the right moment. So we just grabbed that opportunity, and Ram ensured that he went through the whole interview process and meet the founder of Mantra at the end of the whole interview process. And he met the founder, and he told that he didn't wanted a job opportunity, but he wanted an opportunity to collaborate with Mantra to implement this idea in Tamil Nadu, because Tamil Nadu, there were no other organizations working in the space of school transformation or inside classroom for quality education. So it just happened, and luckily they were at a point, Mantra as an organization were at a point where they were starting an incubation for new startups in education. And we became the first partner to get incubated in their incubation program. And that's how we got the opportunity of funding for initial year. So Ram and I, after a 6-month implementation, we received funding from them, so we could sustain ourselves at that moment. And also we got the courage to partner with 2 schools, because there were a lot of tools and knowledge from Mantra as an organization, which we took back. And during the phase of actually going inside the field, because we were in Bangalore completing our program and then immediately shifting to Chennai to implement the whole idea of Vidya Vidya and school transformation, what we did was we interacted a lot with our professors in SOLM, and we shared our idea, we validated, we had a lot of arguments, we understood how the whole aspect of in the field actually inside the school, how are we going to do the transformation, how the transformation journey would look like. And this whole ended at a point where we actually started working on the program design aspect of, you know, how our program is going to look on field, what are some of the outcomes that we are going to see inside the field. And with a very, you know, beautiful picture of what we are going in field, we just entered the field. And Tamil Nadu was a whole new concept for me, especially because I am from Mumbai and I landed in Tamil Nadu to implement the whole school transformation program. So just understanding the whole context, how different it is. Mantra was doing in Bangalore, how different can we contextualize it according to the surrounding that we are in, to the people that we are working with. Took a little time, took little efforts to understand that. The challenge that we faced during implementation was that we didn't have anyone in Tamil Nadu to support us with our organization or with our program. So knowledge aspect, we had a lot of support. We had our professors, we had our notes, we made use of our notes very rigorously, and we made sure that we translated it very concretely to what we are doing. And but the problem that we had was the entrepreneurial side of what we were doing. So how do we manage the finance? How do we organize our team? And I think at first year was difficult, but the first year's focus was just to pilot the program. So we onboarded 2 of our schools which trusted us for our education that we did and for the people behind us, and they allowed us to pilot our program with them. And I think after the pilot program, we just built the confidence that we could do, and we could see the changes that we're expecting inside the school. And it just continued, and now we are working with around 11 schools, and we also have a Tamil Nadu state government partnership to work with their state-run schools. So yeah, this is how we went through the whole implementation journey.
So how soon we started this? It was May 12th. It was the last day at APU, and May 27th was our inauguration at IIT Chennai. Yeah, wow. It was that soon. Yeah.
May 14th we were in Chennai. Yeah, inauguration took longer. We partnered with school on May 14th.
Wonderful. So I'm sure EDE will be glad, as well as Funnel and Rogers would be very glad if you take their story to them, I suppose. Thank you so much, Ram and Rajila. Harish, what about you? How did you go about implementing?
The first time in my life that I heard about this organization, foundation, society, whatever, this enterprise is when I was studying around third class something, when I firstly heard about the Azim Premji Foundation, where they started giving, the only thing I can still remember is that they started giving these projectors to the government schools in Telangana district, and I was the first animation movie in my school. That's there I remember. So that's when I started, understanding, got to know about this organization. Later, a lot of things happened, but later when I was studying in Azim University, I think I picked development and sustainability as my minor degree. So when, I used to tell, I think Jayanti, I used to tell a lot of times, and Steffi, I used to tell a lot of times that I want to start something, I want to do something. I don't know how they took this thing, but, on a serious note, I used to tell that thing, I want to start as early as graduate and all. Then because of my interest, Steffi sent me to an organization which is in Andhra Pradesh called SEED, which works around the health sector of people in rural areas in Andhra Pradesh. So that is the first exposure I got from other organizations. So there I've been and did some internship for 1 month, and I came back out of that. Then after the right, I graduated from April. In between the 4 months of time, by August I registered this thing. So it become easy for me. It's registration and setting up it become easy because because I studied from residential schools. There will be used to be 700 people in each year, and a couple of times I worked as a school captain. So I used to have a very large network. So, and I strongly believe that network is always network. So those are the people who are always here and there, everywhere in Telangana I have friends. So it's become easy to pick me the surveys, do this need assessments and all. So then actually the team who started need is all of them are from the socialist residential schools, and studied together. We studied together, and we didn't just share the classroom, but we shared the thoughts and ideas together when we were growing up. So we similarly used to have that from right from a childhood. So it after that just after that we came and registration has been done smoothly, but the time to set up what sort of programs that we have to work took us around 6 months. So we whenever I get used to holiday center, I've been to go there and sit with the community and used to talk to them, what are you expecting, what are the flaws and what is negativity in the community and what you're expecting and all. And different perspective came up. Then after because we went with the preconception notion of development, we went with the preconception notion of what the community needs. But then after we've been to community and we've spoken to a lot of people over there, and individually had calls, and we did this need survey, need assessment we did, and so then we find we find out a lot of problems, but then we prioritize the problems according to the need of the community. Then just started. Can't you imagine that 1 year for 1 year we 50 students and 12 women, we worked with them without spending even 1 rupee. That was a big achievement we built, because it's all about the trust we started building with the community. And also we picked up the right people, and we always wanted to empower the people in the community. We never want to change their lives, and we are not someone to we don't want they look for someone always for seeking help. So we started picking up people, and we started motivating them, empowering them. We started giving the skills to them. Then we want them to take up the in charge of their own community and start leading the community. That's how we took the ships, and in a very short time we able to manage 50 volunteers from the same community we're working. So if we tell one thing, they'll do all the program, they'll finish up everything, and they'll give the bills also. We want to build a strong connectivity between the community and us. So finally we in a way to achieve that thing. And yes, after this and all, and we never try to reach for funds and all. It all went free, and we look for people, and we look for community heads who could support us, guiding and all. Then once I set up this organization and started creating, then I reached to a lot of APF faculty. At the same time, the people, my teachers in schooling and all. So those are people, started telling me you can reach them, you can reach out to them. And then I started visiting a couple of organizations in Hyderabad, and I had some call talks with them and been to their places and visited what sort of work they are doing. And it's all happened in a flow, I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harish. Those of you who are participating and have questions, just to let you know, we'll be taking questions in the end. In the meantime, you could put your questions on the window, addressing it to everybody, so that relevant people who need to answer it can have a view of it. I think at this juncture, let's speak about some of the challenges. I think each of you have kind of given some sense of what challenges you faced in the conversation so far, but I'm sure those weren't the only challenges. So could you take a minute or two, and each of you can, start off with some of the challenges. Maybe Harish, you can start now, since we were going this way. Now we'll start with you and go in the reverse.
So the one of the biggest challenge I faced is from from my own family. So because being from the community, again from downtrodden and from not well settled family, so my parents always want me to work and earn for them and for family. So there were no support. I thought no one supported me to start this enterprise, and always they used to tell why do you need to do this thing, and there are a lot of people to do and all. And that's the biggest challenge. I always used to tell them, I somehow got this, empowered through education sort of thing. Then I can be a better person to guide them, not change anything at all. But they never, actually they never believed in me. That is one. And also when we entered into the community, it in initial days it was very tough for us. The biggest challenge is that there are a lot of political things happening in the community. When we started working with women, when we started talking to the men over there, when we started working with the youth and all, they always look it in a sense of political way that we are doing something for our favor. And there are instances where we did something for good cause of the community, and those people started blaming us. A lot of things were there, but that is one. And also because of the cultural stigma they have, and beliefs and stereotypes and all they have, it was very tough, because when we went there and we started telling that you can't discriminate the woman, you can't you can't show inferiority towards women and all. So a lot of things, because the ideas we have and the ideologies we live, those are so powerful, and which can't be directly talked and spoken in the community, which are very tough to deal directly. So people started, there are a group of people still today who are working against us, which means they're not the organization, they're the group of people in the same community. So it's kind of hard. So that, and also funding is one major problem in my area, because I can say, because there are very few organizations have been started in this area, especially in Siddipet district. I think this is the first organization which was started in same district. This is the first organization. NEED is the first organization started, and there are other organizations who comes and works with the government people and go off. That was there. So it became very tough for us to build a trust between the community and us. So it took us, even though we did the these need assessments and with surveys and all. So still there are, whenever we go to start some program and all, we didn't get support. But finally, there are some government schools who, appreciated our work, and they are the one who, aligns with us, and they started working with us. That is two. And third one is that there is that one notion in the same nearby community. The people used to go to the started working on different things that maybe gender sensitivity, gender roles, sexuality, sex menstruation. When we started talking about these things, and also when we want youth to work more in the community and develop their own community, we also got opposition from the private schools in the community. That was also a little bit challenging to manage, and the people who are back of the private schools are some big political leaders in these places. So this is all about people opposing an ideology.
Thank you, Harish. I think, am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ram and Regina, maybe you can a minute or two on what challenges you faced.
Sure. Personally, as Harish said, it was personally a big challenge to start an NGO, because initially my relatives used to believe that I was doing MBA, not MA. So it was that kind of
magical from engineering
combination at my place. Yeah, from engineering, then 2 years degree would be MBA, not MA. So yeah, it was that challenge. But professionally, at university, it was very comfortable to talk about the language that we talk. As Anil said rightly, when we used to go to the field and we talk about the concept of education, it was very hard to converse with the other person, as they are talking only about in a different perspective. So to convince a program was the biggest challenge that we faced in the initial days. Even now we have changed a bit of like telling the narration of our program.
Yeah, so so the program that we initially started was called School Transformation Program, and the idea was that we work for effective school leadership and effective teaching learning practices, which in turn will result into better student learning outcomes. So this was a 2-year program, and in this 2-year program, the idea was to how do we change beliefs and actions of school leader, so that they understand what does quality education actually mean and how they deliver that inside their schools. So the whole core idea was that how we as change leaders practice that, instead of preaching it to them, practice that and create that thinking, that realization inside them, so that it's a sustainable change and not something that is facilitated for a temporary time. So for this, the another big challenge was to find a team member apart from both of us who would go to schools and lead this transformation journey for the schools, because we see that the person who should be representing us Vidya in the school should be there inside the school for at least a minimum of 3 days a week to understand the whole school, do the needs assessment, understand the strength and areas of improvement, and then design a journey where we are not saying that these are a set of solutions that we will do for all schools and this is what we follow, but customize it, contextualize it according to the school need and deliver it accordingly. So this required a certain knowledge and skill to do it. And also we were also in a learning phase. So we wanted people at the, when you are a startup, we want more people to share perspectives with us, share insights with us of how we could do better. So finding that set of people at Tamil Nadu context and understanding how we have these core team members, the beginning team members for us, was also a very big challenge. I think only after 1 year we had one team member in our team apart from me and Ram, and now we are 8 members. So we slowly realized how we should, instead of seeing the knowledge part, we saw the skill part in the people and tried to have capacity building for our team members on a continuous basis, so that the ideology, the perspectives is not, misaligned. So that was one more challenge that we faced in the whole setup. Yeah.
Harita, what about you? I think you did mention some of them initially. Anything that you left? I'm sure there are many more challenges, right?
Yeah, there are many challenges. One thing is, I don't exactly know if this is a challenge or an opportunity, because it works both ways. So it's not about the lack of awareness about something called that there are things called that there are handcrafted things that are produced in the country. Probably that's something we have realized, because when we try to sell the products, it's not about trying to explain the craft or trying to tell them that, look boss, there are so many man hours that go into this and this is so much of hard work and you need to buy this. No, most of the times it was people were not aware that so and so things were produced in India. I mean, not just in India, probably few kilometers away from where they are living. So that was a very surprising thing. And that was also very difficult, because because sometimes it's an opportunity, like I said, sometimes it's a challenge, because a lot of your effort goes into bringing out the product and taking it to the customer. And another one would be the market linkages issue. In the sense, for example, the procurement is a huge problem, because it's a very fragmented sector. For you to get a product from the artisan and be able to sell it is a huge challenge. For instance, we procured products from artisans in Assam, which were made out of water hyacinth, beautifully crafted products, and the designs are of international standard. And we got them once and they got sold off like hotcakes, and customers were asking for more. And when we got back to them and we wanted them to send them across, those people had a very tough time, because it's somewhere in remote corner of Assam and they had to put the stock onto a train and we had to go to the railway station, pick them up, and major confusion. And they were also looking at really huge orders, like per piece they would send something like 1,000 items or 2,000 or 3,000. That's a very huge order for us. And we were a small business. We are a small business. So we were not looking at such huge numbers. So that's another challenge. And I think third and the most important challenge is lack of support for enterprises which are not into manufacturing per se, because whenever we try to approach, I could call it a women enterprise, because me and my sister, we both were working on it. So whenever we try to approach any kind of mentoring program or a financial institution, when we needed support, they were more interested in organizations which would directly work with the communities. They needed a community. They wanted us to show a particular geographical location and a particular community. Or if not that, they wanted us to be in manufacturing directly. For instance, let us say I had to set up, are you going to, set up a jute manufacturing unit? Are you going to make things out of, do you sit and craft things? Questions like that. Or, and all sorts of, we didn't even know how to answer them. Didn't understand the fact that this is a huge domestic market and we are trying to sell product which is produced in India, and this is a far more sustainable option. Because whenever we attended the all sorts of gatherings and entrepreneur cell meetings and things like that, we had this team of youngsters, and whenever you say startup, it's generally assumed that it's a tech startup. So they were only interested to mentor and support tech-based startup. Whether it's a stupid app like, an app that is going to help people park their cars in a mall, I don't know of what use it is, they would get full big time mentoring and lakhs and lakhs of funding will go into that. But when I say that with all the hashtag vocal for local and with all the sustainability, narrative, when we go and try to tell them that, was we are going to get products from the artisans and we are going to sell it in the domestic market, and there is a huge demand. And we used to get, especially for example, we tried to apply for this very famous Mudra loan. So when we approached the bank manager and we told him about the whole thing, he didn't even know what an e-commerce website was. He stared into our face and he said, what are you even talking about? How do you sell things online? Why don't you sell it over Amazon? Why do you want a different website? Why do you need a separate website? Questions like that. And we didn't know how to answer. And you need contacts. If you need mentoring, you need financial support, you need contacts, and we didn't have contacts. Luckily, unlike all the others who spoke here, I have a very supportive family. My extended family and my family, they stood by me. They're like, you have to, we have been seeing you since your childhood. You want to do something on your own, go ahead, do it. But how long will that take me? I need support. I need mentoring. I couldn't get that at the right time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So at this juncture, I think, Anil, maybe we should spend a couple of minutes on the process and then move to a Q&A session. There are a handful of questions lined up. So let's quickly move to that. I know I'm conscious that we are hit the hour, but since there's high interest in the conversations, we'll continue for a few more minutes.
Sure. So on the process, I think teams, let's pick on the teams, right? It was a good example that Haritha mentioned. So we have Haritha and her sister on one side, we have Ram and Regila on the other side. I think teams are really critical, and doing something by yourself is very, very difficult. So please figure out if you can get the right teams, right combinations to run your enterprise. And with that, let me just show you what we have in mind. Essentially, we've created this small portal where we want you to share your ideas, your thoughts, and thanks to Sanjit actually who's put this together. So it's very simple. We've shared the link also, and right from what stage you are in, what kind of intervention you're doing, to what is your source of funding, what kind of help you require. And yeah, we've kept it very simple, just 3 screens, so it shouldn't take you too long. You could also send it over email, and once we get your requests, your proposals, we'll go through it and then come back to you in terms of how we can help you based on what you've requested also. So that's a very small explanation, and we'll take questions. Rajesh, Annapurna, do you want to add anything on the process, or we should take Q&A?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add at this point, but if there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer. But just one thing I won't say, I mean, hats off to Haritha, Regila, Ram, and Harish. It's very inspiring stories. And we hope, I mean, Haritha, you mentioned that you felt that lack of mentorship at some point. We hope that going forward, we will try and provide at least to the APU alumni, and hopefully you can be one of the mentors too as we go along. I mean, each one of you with your experiences can, I mean, hopefully we get enough applications, and we will direct some of them to you for mentoring and for them to contact you. And
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. No, actually, when I heard about nurture, that's what I thought about it. What if something like this was there a couple of years back? Maybe things would have been different for me, because this is a familiar platform for me to just walk in and speak up.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Annapurna. I think definitely I echo your views in terms of, I think we have, hopefully people don't have to have that kind of struggle, and we will be able to help with some mentorship. So there are a few questions. Some questions came earlier. I think most of those questions have kind of been answered during the conversations with the panelists, but there is one question for you, Haritha. What was the inspiration for the name meme? So maybe you can,
Oh, okay, all right. Actually, that's a term from biology. It's a genetic term, which means something that is passed on from one person to another. So I felt that handicrafts are generally passed on apart from being passed on from one generation to another. Each and every handicrafts is recreated in different ways across various cultures. They might have different names, but it's essentially, for example, ikat weave. Ikat weave happens in many countries across many cultures in different ways, and something called dream catchers. Dream catchers come in different designs in different cultures. So, and that actually also resonates with the very popular term that we are using these days, meme, something that is quickly circulated from one form to another. We thought it would be catchy as well. So meme.
I think you got your craft store name meme much more before, now that it's become a very popular term on the web. But yeah, I suppose you got it much before. Wonderful. So there's a question to the, for the process, and I think this is more to the nurture team. What is the example of additional documents? So maybe one of you can just give one example of an additional document. Anil, maybe you can go, or Rajesh, or anybody else can take a shot.
So I couldn't quite get the question. Are they looking for additional documents to understand the process, or?
I think it means, and probably the way I read it was that there is we have said there is a last section in the web.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so anything about your story, you don't have to be constrained with the Google form. If you need to share with us more information about some of the work you've done, some of the research you've done, supporting documents, feel free to share that, right? So don't get constrained by the format, right? Keep it flexible. We'll keep it flexible.
Thanks, Anil. We have one more question. It's from Divya to... I think either Ram or Regilla can take this one. Can you share an example or case about things in school which you have facilitated to change?
Yeah, so I am understanding this question as solutions or interventions that we work on inside the school, if I'm right, Divya. Yeah, great. So I'll just share 3 examples. One is, there are many, but in leadership practices, what we mainly see is that how leaders can improve their daily practices that they do inside the school. There are structures, there are procedures that they do inside the school. It could be as simple as just doing classroom observation. So what are certain things that they can make note while they are doing classroom observation, and how they can collect these data and make a data-driven decision. So how their decision making can be influenced through the daily practices that they have recorded through their observations, through their data collections, through their conversations, or through their assessments that they do. So making them realize that classroom observation is not just about teacher actions, but is also about how students react. It's also about how the environment is. So this is one example about a leader. About teachers, we see that how we could, make that passion, because most of our teachers, we see that like we work in low income private schools and state run government schools. So yeah, the passion or the motivation for teachers to actually come and teach and learn is really not that great, because they come from the same community. They studied in the same school, they go back to the community, and they come back to this school as a job. And teaching profession is not considered something that is as noble as we feel right now in this community. So it is more like a part time for them. So how to create passion and interest in them, so that they realize that what impact they create in each student's life. So that is a realization that we try to bring. And how do we do it is that there is an intervention called Katka Kasdara. I can share a blog about it to understand more in detail. This intervention is simply to make them understand the rational reasons for why they are teaching and how it is going to impact the student. Try out certain experiments in their classroom and see that how it is impacting students. So this realization, linking, and actually making them reflect makes them feel motivated, and that passion for teaching is slowly driven through the 3 years journey that we have with them. So yeah, these are few examples that I could give.
Thank you so much, Regina. We have had a lot of questions that came earlier in the day, but I think most of them have been answered through the conversation. Describe your journey. How did you turn your idea into reality? How many years did you take to research for organizational framework and its setup and upkeep? I think each one has shared their journey, so I think you kind of get a sense of what it took, and you can, offline we could, further answer these questions if there are any more questions. Funding and financial aid, I think everybody spoke about it, so there's not much on the table that, what were the legalities and formal processes involved in setting up such a platform, and how did you counter it? Again, I think when you have, each of these would have different ways in which, if you're setting up an e-commerce versus an NGO, the methods are very different. So my suggestion to whoever has asked this question is that whatever proposal you have,
Sanjit, can I add on this one?
Sure, please.
I think when you're talking about platform, if you're talking about nurture, and I have an equivalent story that we are working on. So it's very important for you to draw up a matrix of what is it that your organization requires, and and then you figure out what are the sources of funding. Based on that, you decide what kind of entity you go. For example, if you're going down the path of a startup, there are programs from Atal Innovation Mission, there are programs from Atal Community Innovation Mission, but each of them defines you should either be a Section 8 company or you need to be a private limited company. So define your needs first, right? And make it as exhaustive as possible, not just today, over a 3-year span at least. And based on that, you then decide whether, so that's one decision-making criteria. The second decision-making criteria is your first few funders would have a say a bit in terms of which way your legal entity goes, right? That's the other challenge. For example, if you're getting investments from overseas entities, then you need to be with an NGO which has FCRA. You can't start a new setup. So keep some of these in mind, and we'll be happy to handhold you during the processes. So just back to you.
Thank you, Anil. We had a couple of more questions, which came up. So I'll shoot it to the panelists itself. So what keeps you going? What was that aha moment? And just take half a minute and tell us what really keeps you going with your venture. And when is you found that aha moment that yes, a justification of what I was doing, the POC I did, whatever it is, just share a thought on that. Harita, you want to start off with this one?
Yeah. I think as I've already mentioned, I don't know if it can be called as an aha moment, but then when you finish that cycle, when you buy something, you speak to the artisan, you come back, you sell it to your customer, you go back to the artisan. When you complete that one whole cycle, and when you actually understand what goes into that process and the satisfaction and the confidence that we get out of it, that's what keeps us going. And that's the aha moment. Yeah. because I can proudly go back and show my face to the artisan. I don't have to hide anything.
Wonderful. Ram and Rajila, what about you guys?
Yeah, as in the field, like it's bit hard to work with the leadership team in the government sector. It was like 7 months journey, and during our need analysis, we came to know that it was very less. 1 or 2 meetings happened, SMC meetings happened in that school. Our school lead was there continuously to talk with the HM about the importance of SMC. It was our last meeting, SMC meeting before Corona, COVID-19 pandemic. The principal was very transparent, saying that we have 25,252 rupees in bank account. From the next year, we would like to get your ideas to implement implement in the betterment for the school. So she started collaborating with the parents after 7 months continuous of engagement. That was the aha moment, and we wanted to go forward with that moment. Yeah.
What about you, Harish? What insight do you have?
So we'll try to explain a very recent one which has happened during lockdown. So when this lockdown has implemented in the beginning, so we thought of doing something COVID relief work we want to do. And that time we don't even have any money in our account, organization account. We don't have anything. And yeah, that initially we thought of the only thing we thought of doing is we everyone collected each one collected $500, and we gathered some 5,000 rupees, and we brought some like 100 soaps, just soaps, 5 rupee soaps. So the initial idea is that we'll go to each home in the community and we'll give this soap to them, and we'll tell them what all to follow during this COVID, and whatever this instructions, we'll give the instructions. That's the initial idea. And we reached out to 50 families in the community, and then we given soaps, and they explained the procedure and how to take care and all. That was the initial idea. Then after that, I want to do it a little bit larger scale. Then I started reaching out to people, and slowly, first post and the first message about this I shared to Asim itself. First message I shared and started telling him that we wanted to do some work on this thing. I want to do some COVID relief distribution. So then that's the first fund we got from Asim, and likewise we started collecting the fund from different organizations and different people individually. So at the end of COVID, till yesterday we have managed to raise 5,70,000 rupees during this COVID. And we were able to manage 370. We managed to help 370 families with each kit consists of 900 rupees, around 800 to 900 rupees. Likewise, we distribute to 300 families. At the same time, we find out some 70 prostitute women in the areas we are working, and we help them also. So that was aha moment, because I can say we started up giving 5 rupee soap, and we ended up helping 370 families with full meals for one month itself. And also we completely believe that when your cause is with so much of respect, and when there is purity in your cause, when you have purity in your work you are doing, then automatically all nature will support you when do this succeed that cause, I believe. Thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful, Harish. Very, very delighted to hear about your aha moment in the moment of crisis and how you helped so many people. I think we've pretty much overshot the time. It has been a very interesting conversation with all of you. So at this juncture, I would firstly thank our panelists, Harish, all the insights that they've given, as well as everybody who has helped us organize this webinar about the Nurture platform. I know there are a couple of more questions out there. I think Mukesh Kumar has asked a couple of questions on the process and stuff like that. What we will do is we will share more information with you. Anil, we'll definitely go back, because I don't think we need to spend time now, given that we are over the hour and short of time. We can go back to everybody, the couple of questions that need to be elaborated. We can do that, right?
So yeah, just to add, it's not going to be like your assignment, whether you'll get a B grade or C grade, right? We'll work with you through the journey. So that's our commitment. So do reach out to us. I think that's step one. Share your current situation, what stage you are in, and we'll be happy to work with you to take it and ensure we reimagine the future. Right?
Thanks, Anil. So thank you everybody for participating and helping, and everybody who's helped us organize this webinar. You can see the chat window. Nikhil has shared the conversation that's happening on the special interest group on the alumni portal. You can use that to post questions and so on. So we can continue to have dialogue, and probably like Anil mentioned earlier, we will have to have a series of these workshops. Probably we have to do more. One is this webinar is just the start. The journey is just started. So I would like to conclude by thanking everybody for their participation. It's been a wonderful evening, a good way to end Sunday with so many insights. Annapurna, you want to share something?
Yeah, just one thing, in response to what Mukesh has asked, that think of this as you coming to us with some idea, some basic idea of what you want to do, and we will help you, nurture that idea into actually a workable project plan, something that we can take it forward to funding agencies or, something like that. But it's not just that, we are not sitting with a bank of ideas here and then as alumni approaches, we give out ideas. That is not the thing, right? So we want the alumni to come up with some idea, some passion for something that they want to do, some need that they may have identified, right? Some background work should have been done by the alumni. Yeah.
Sanjit, can we get Asim, Vikas, Padma, Nazrul to say a word?
Yeah, I was about to ask Asim, Vikas, Padma, do you guys have anything to say?
Sumit, Hansika, Arun.
Hansika, Arun.
No. All I want to say is it's been a wonderful evening. When we were conceptualizing this, we were unsure as to where it will lead us. But it has been a very inspiring evening. I learned a lot today, and I'm very, very excited to be part of this journey. Is all I want to say right now.
It was a very nice evening. The four of you sharing your experience was more inspiring, and I hope it inspires a lot more to come in with their own ideas, and and we start this journey out as Azim Premji University team. And I hope, as what Anil says, that we hope to reimagine the future.
I think the sentiment resonates. Really, really enjoyed the conversations today. Very inspiring stories. I think Ram and Regilla, I've known them through the social enterprise cell days, and it's just so inspiring to see them taking these ideas into the field. Naga Harita's story, I could resonate so much with my own failed handloom and handicraft sector experiences, and very inspiring to see your persistence. And Harish, I think you're so young and you're doing such amazing work. So I think there's so much within the APU alumni group that we can channel, and very excited to be, providing in some way and supporting that medium through the Nurture platform. So yeah, looking forward to good ideas coming from the group.
Hi, this is Padma here.
Yeah, Padma.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see the marriage between the webinar and Nurture. And we had a lovely conversation today. The panelists are amazing. Your stories are so inspiring. I think if each of us can talk more and more about Nurture, I think we will be able to do a lot more than we are able to do just as a group of 8 or 9 people. So each of us has influences in our own, I would say, batches or in our own groups. And I think this is something that we need to take up and we need to talk about it. And I know that some of the batches are extremely well connected on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and there are so many other ways of connecting. This conversation needs to come alive, and we need your help for this. So reaching out to everybody who's on this platform. And of course, we'll reach out in many other ways. Thank you.
Wonderful. If there is, pretty much everybody has spoken. I don't know if anybody else wants to have a word.
Arun, you want to comment?
No, Anil, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we'll end the webinar. It's we well overshot, but I'm sure it's a well-deserved 30 minutes extra on a Sunday evening for this very insightful webinar. Like I said before, we are very thankful to our esteemed panelists who have taken their time off on a Sunday evening and also participated in the prep and all of that to get this webinar going. So I personally would extend my heartfelt thanks to them for having helped us bring stories of alumni working in enterprises, setting up their own, and bringing it to this larger forum and helping nurture, to give some insights to people who are interested in doing these things. So thank you very much.